Hello and welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm Loudguns and today we're going to go on a bit of a money making adventure. I've made a couple of guides recently about somewhat broken loops surrounding illegal cargo, and unsurprisingly as of the latest patch these have taken a significant nerf. In this vid we're going to be looking at what post nerf rates look like, take a look at probably the now most profitable loop in the game in the form of Reclaimer Salvage, and think about how and why we might combine the two. So if this sounds good to you, grab a cup of tea while I roll the intro, then let's get into it. So let's start with Bounty Cargo, and ask and answer the question, is it dead? Short answer, no it's not dead, but it's definitely taken an arrow to the knee. For anyone who's missed this loop in previous patches, a lot of the big ships that you find on VHRT and ERT bounty missions will have cargo in their holds. So if you're careful when you take them down and you make sure to only soft death them rather than exploding them fully, then it's possible to take out your target and its escorts, then EVA across to them and unload these goodies into your own ship. I particularly love running these missions in my Crusader Hercules C2, equipped with two AD-5B ballistic Gatling guns. The ships in these missions are usually large targets like Hammerheads, Hercs, Starfarers, etc, and they've got pretty hefty shields, so with energy weapons it can take a while to cut through them and get into their holes. Ballistics on the other hand make short work of these targets by circumventing the shields. The downside is you do have to manage your ammo, and you'll probably have to reload every 2 to 3 missions depending on how accurate you are. When it comes to the cargo, the nerf has definitely done some damage to profitability, but compared with other game loops, it still stacks up very nicely. The loot tables have been expanded to include far more lower value legal cargo, including practically worthless commodities such as iron or copper that I would just totally avoid. There's also a raft of low value cargo, things like medical supplies which retail for around 2k per SCU. I don't personally recommend filling up on these, as I know that there are more valuable commodities, but it is worth pointing out that a bulk cargo like this 150 or so SCU of med supplies would net you a reasonable 300k or so. Do keep an eye out for some of what I would term mid-level cargo, commodities such as gold and taranite which sell for 7 to 8k per SCU. If you come across decent quantities of these, then they can be a good money spinner, and you might get lucky and find some quantanium as well, which is around 25k per SCU, and can net you a good chunk of change. All of these commodities also have the added advantage of being legal, so you can sell them to the TDD buildings found at the 4 major landing zones. And this means your landing and sale can be pretty much risk-free, assuming you don't smash into a hangar. But the jackpot find is gasping weevil eggs, which are still modestly prevalent in the ERT missions. These have been decidedly toned down and always seem to spawn as a smaller part of a larger cargo, and the 32 SCU boxes of these appear to have completely disappeared. But given they'll sell at the scrapyards for 112.5k per SCU, even a small load can deliver huge returns. So as a test, I ran a mix of ERT and VHRT missions around the Crusader system for about 2 hours, using some of my previous optimizations like prioritising the space-based bounties and the asteroids around Yella, so that when I did find cargo it was just that bit more accessible. In total, I made just over 1 million from legal cargo with a mix of taranite, gold and quantanium, and then I risked a run to Brio's breaker yard on Damer to sell off my gasping weevil eggs. Usually, I reduce my risk to some extent by favouring the further out scrapyards like Devlin's on Euterpe or Samson & Sons on Wala, but at this point in the afternoon my dog was looking at me with this "can we go for a walk now" face, so I went for the nearby quick option. Thankfully I was unaccosted, and the 27 SCU of eggs that I got made me an extra 3 million credits. So all in all, 4 million aUEC plus the couple 100k I made from the bounty missions. The nerf seems to have particularly hit the other illicit cargo, and in my travels I saw very little in the way of ETAM and Neon, and in all of the ships I scanned, no Slam, Widow or Maze, all of which historically spawned in large amounts and really bulked out profits. Still, while the bumper profits that used to come with the cargo in these ships has been slashed, 4 million credits for 2 hours work, or roughly 2 mil an hour, is still far more than you make in most other game loops, such as mining, bunkers, or if you were just to grind the bounties in a fighter. One thing I would note is that you obviously need to do more bounties, because you're finding less cargo. So if, like me, you're relying on a ballistic based loadout, you'll be needing to reload more often, which could slow you down. So one good option is to take advantage of the component switching whenever you come across an Aegis Redeemer. The Redeemer packs 4 AD5Bs on its turrets, so if you unlock your ports, you can always quickly switch out the guns on your C2 or M2, and it will give you a full load of ammunition again, because apparently NPCs shoot ballistics without ever having to worry about ammo counters. It can be a little fiddly, so I do prefer to switch to the smaller multi-tool tractor beam for this, but once you get practiced, you'll be able to make a pit stop far quicker than travelling to an outpost to rearm. So let's take a look at the new King of Credits for all of you who want to keep the cash rolling in, so you can try out a bunch of new ships in-game. Or like me, sink millions of credits into a race team with no intention of seeing any of it again. Massive shout out to Frontier's Daymar Rally Truck Team, Tint, Shrikes, 24 and Pagan Wolf for placing third in what was a gruelling race. And also to Noise Maze and Slimako for sticking it out with me through many hours of many 30Ks. But for this loop, you're going to need the largest salvage ship out there, the Aegis Reclaimer, as we're going to need to do some munching on some chunky targets. Now a downside to this is that the Reclaimer is going to set you back north of 15 million credits in game. So it's a good job that Bounty Cargo in something like a C2, which will cost you just shy of 5 million, is still somewhat viable. The best mission to focus on here is the cleanup mission. You'll find this by going to your contract manager, heading to the personal tab, and then looking under salvage. There will usually be 2 of these, but we want the big one, the one offering 250k to remove evidence of a Ninetales hammerhead. This mission is always going to spawn in the yellow asteroid ring. You are against the clock on this one, but don't worry about it, an hour is way more time than you're going to need. Simply fly up to the hammerhead and get nice and close, then hop on into the claw operator seat, which you'll find over on the right hand side of the pilot's chair. Turn the power on and press M to extend the claw. First you're going to want to be in fracturing mode. As long as you've got a green outline around the ship, you can left click to start breaking it apart. It's a bit hard to see, but a dial will start to slowly fill when the process is running. You will crack it quicker if you're closer to the target, but just don't get too close because you've got to think about that claw extending out and maybe pushing the ship. Once the dial fills all the way, the ship will crack apart. In the case of the hammerhead, it's going to split into 2 bits. So you can then switch over to the disintegration field by right clicking. When it comes to disintegration, there is a modifier based on how close you are to the piece, so it can really help to be doing this as a pair, with one person positioning the ship to maximise the yield, and the other operating the claw. So at max range you'll suffer a negative 19% penalty, but it is possible to get this up to plus 19% by getting as close as possible. Keep in mind that the depot of the Reclaimer is only 240 SCU, and the large section of the hammerhead is going to give you a base of 220, so fiddling around to get anything more than 10% on this bit is kind of wasted effort. And once you're in position, just left click again to start the disintegration field running. Sometimes the second part of the hammerhead will also be in the field, but if you're further away from that part, it will normally take longer to disintegrate than the large bit. Since you only have space for one at a time, I usually start with the big bit and cut the field off by left clicking again before I suck in the smaller part and waste it due to a lack of depot space. 240 SCU of construction mats will then be in your depot, and you can move down to the salvage processing deck to start printing the boxes. The machine can print 1 SCU, 2 SCU, 8 SCU and 16 SCU crates, which you can switch between using the drop down menu. The machine can then be set to auto eject to keep printing that size of box. The Reclaimer has 2 places to store cargo, The salvage processing deck itself has space on the grid for 240 SCU, while the cargo room that you have to access by going down the elevator has a further 180 SCU of storage. For those of you who are perfectionists, you will want 8 SCU boxes, 52 2 SCU boxes, and 12 1 SCU boxes to completely fill the cargo room's grid. While for the processing deck, you're going to want 10 16 SCU boxes, 36 2 SCU boxes, and 8 1 SCU boxes. A hammerhead will net you a full 240 for the large part, while the smaller piece is about 30.8 SCU. So with a bit of fine tuning, you can get that to about 35 or so. Construction mats sell for about 6k per SCU, so in total you should net about 1.65 million from these. And as an added bonus, you'll complete the mission and get 250k, rounding you out to 1.9 million per run. Of course, one downside is that after 2 missions, you'll have run out of grid space. But never fear, because after your cargo grid is completely full, you can just keep printing 16 SCU boxes, which you can stack in the open areas of the processing deck, including making use of the salvage balcony level above. We've done quite a bit of testing, and wouldn't recommend trying to use the open salvage hold below, as boxes have a tendency to despawn or just fall out the ship. We haven't worked out which it is. You will at some point hit the entity count limit and start losing boxes though. So in this example run, Ravnak managed to fit an additional 56 16 SCU boxes, or 896 SCU on board, before he started experiencing notably 1 in 1 out levels of despawning. We came back into port as well with our depot full, so in total we had 420 SCU on the grid, 896 off grid, and 240 SCU in the depot, which after we'd sold the first lot I just went back and pulled out into the grid in the hangar. So this gave us a total of 1,556 SCU, which sold for about 9.3 million credits. If we include the bonuses for completing the mission, then we're comfortably over 10 million for a run which took a bit over an hour and a half. I would say that while it's possible to do this solo, having another person really helps speed things up, since there's a lot of arranging to do in the cargo hold and running back and forth can eat up time. Working as a pair, one of you can handle moving between mission locations and doing the munching from the bridge, while the other deals with the cargo management side of things in the hold. One thing which I have seen some people doing, which I really wouldn't recommend, is if you're doing this solo, just don't then walk back to like OM1 or OM2 around Yella, and get out of your pilot seat and go and sit down in your cargo hold. You are basically pirate bait if you do that. But, because of course there's a but, the more people who know about this and are able to go out and buy a reclaimer, then the lower the rates of return. Because there's only ever one of these missions up per server at a time. So if you can get onto a server and that cleanup mission isn't showing, then chances are there's some other salvagers out there munching through it. And who knows how many others are waiting patiently around Yella in their claimers to be the first to the punch when the next one pops. So we're currently finding more reliable success by combining bounties and munching. And if your friend who's taking the bounty missions is doing them in a cargo ship like a Hercules, then they'll be able to scoop any valuable cargo that you come across at the same time. ERTs are going to reliably spawn at least 2 large ships, which will give you a few hundred SCU of construction mats each, like the Hammerhead does. And in some cases you'll get all 4 targets flying big vessels, so there's real potential that you could fill up in just a couple of missions. I would place a high priority on the space bounties in the Yellow Ring or the weapons testing sites over at Hurston, since the Reclaimer does really struggle even with full VTOL in atmosphere, and positioning it can become a real pain. We did run a few tests using SRVs to haul derelicts out of Atmo to waiting Reclaimers, and this wasn't so much about min-maxing as testing out ways to work together, which is something we really love doing in our community and org. So if you do want to get a taste for that sort of thing, then please just follow the Discord link in the video description. Obviously the downside to using the bounty missions as opposed to the cleanups is that you don't get as juicy a bonus payout, but the convenience of multiple wrecks and the much lower competition for them means I think you're going to be getting more consistent salvage targets. If you just come across a little bit of good cargo, then that'll easily make up the difference. If you are flying solo, you can also just use the illegal or legal salvage contracts, which you'll find in your contract manager. But then of course you are going from getting paid to paying for the locations, so it will take the edge off your profits, but not by that much. So there we have it. The heyday of Bounty Cargo is over, but let's face it, we always knew that was going to get nerfed at some point. And similarly, this technique with the Reclaimer is going to get rebalanced again. SC is still very much in alpha, so these little gold mines are going to appear from time to time, and they're going to go as quickly as they came. Enjoy the cash while it lasts, try out some cool ships so that you know what you won't get into your hangar at a later date when profits are harder to come by. And just my 2 cents of advice, don't spend all of your time just doing the thing that makes the most money. Make some bank, but then use it to try out other game loops to see if you enjoy them. I've recently been doing quite a bit of mining on stream, and I regularly get asked why I bother when it doesn't make the most money per hour anymore. And the answer is really quite simple, it's because I enjoy the gameplay. That's pretty much the reason to play video games at the end of the day. If you found this video useful and you think I've earned it, dropping a like and hitting subscribe for more content does really help me out, as does sharing this vid with friends, org mates, and your granddad who's really got his eye on a Saber Comet. I do have a Patreon if you'd like to contribute to my Midnight Burrito Fund, but really just by sticking around and watching to the end, you're already doing more than enough. So with all that said, thanks for stopping by, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.